Good afternoon, this is The Social here on talkSPORT 2 with me, Olly Clink. I'm alongside Harry Symeou and Dan Bardell. Just before we get into the transfers, guys, I don't know if we saw after the Sweden-Japan game, finished 1-1, and both sides have got through to the knockout stages. And Newcastle's Anthony Elanga was on the turf, beating the turf, looking really dumpy, because he thought Sweden were out, which is really funny.
Are you sure he hadn't just found out that Bruno's going to Arsenal?
He's found out he's got to go back to St James's Park at the start of the next season. Talking of Newcastle links, I'm trying to link it to it. Manchester City have agreed a deal with Nottingham Forest to sign Elliot Anderson for a club record £116 million. The England midfielder is set to have a medical in America before completing his move to the Etihad. Here's talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, Alex Cripp.
When you think that he went from Newcastle to Forest for a relatively modest sum, I know Eddie Howe at the time didn't particularly want to cash in, but obviously they had issues with PSR.
Yep.
It's interesting, the figures, City side are saying 116 million, Forest side are saying actually it's nearer to 130 million. Either way, it's a record, as you say, for a British player, potentially a Premier League record fee, eclipsing what Liverpool paid for Alexander Isak this time last year. I was speaking to a couple of ex-players at the darts last night, and we were pondering, if Elliot Anderson is really a £130 million player, how much would someone like Paul Scholes be worth in the current market? I think he's a terrific player, Elliot Anderson. I'm not sure he's a £130 million player. I'll tell you what it does do, Jim. It completely skews the market, doesn't it? If you're Newcastle and you've got people interested in Sandro Tonali, you're going to use that as a benchmark.
Yeah, they need to, because they have no sell-on clause for Elliot Anderson, who they technically sold. Well, they sold him for 35 million to Nottingham Forest, by the way, just quickly. They signed Odysseus Vlachodimos from Nottingham Forest for 20 million, so they essentially sold Elliot Anderson for 15 million.
I think I know who got the better end of that deal.
Yeah, I do as well, Dan, to be honest. Look, you heard Alex Crick there say that it's one of the most overpriced football transfers potentially in Premier League history. Do you go along with that? Do you think Elliot Anderson has been overpriced in this situation?
Obviously, they've compared it to Tonali, but English tax always goes on players. If Tonali's 100 million, then I guess that's Anderson, because he's English, because he's in a similar situation to what Declan Rice was in when he moved for 105, was it, to
105,
to Arsenal at the time. He's playing in the England team now. He's in the 11, performing in a tournament. I'm not saying it's right, because I think fees all round are just completely inflated, but we could argue the fees for any player that makes a transfer now, because they're all absolutely ridiculous, aren't they? But I think the Newcastle angle's like so interesting. They didn't want to lose him. They had to because of PSR. Everyone knows my feelings on PSR, so I won't bore you with them now. But I would think Newcastle would have looked at that at the time and thought, right, we're selling to Forest. They should have put a buyback in. I'm surprised they didn't. He'll do a few years there. Then we'll sell Tonali for big money, and then we can go and get Elliot Anderson back. But they'd have never thought that it would be for the fee that he's going for now.
He's maybe excelled even more than they thought he
would.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And actually, and he said this the other day, and I do think he's right, as much as, it pains me to say as a Newcastle fan, but he needed to move to Forest for this to happen. They're playing a different style to us. He wasn't getting into our midfield regularly, and that was to do with injury.
Do you not think he would have got in ahead of Joe Linton at some point? I remember watching Elliot Anderson in the pre-season game in America, Villa v Newcastle, I think it was either 22 or 23. I thought Elliot Anderson was the best player on the pitch.
Yeah. Potentially, but there was fierce competition at the time for that midfield, and it was difficult to break up a midfield of Bruno Guimarães, Sandro Tonali and Joel Linton. When you consider the fact we hadn't fully seen his potential at this point. Yeah. So like I say, he said it himself. He works better in the kind of system that Forest play, and that's why he's been allowed to excel. Where do you stand on this, Harry? Obviously, your club have signed Declan Rice for 105 million. That's worked out very well. Can Elliot Anderson be on the same level for Man City?
Whenever I've said anything about the Elliot Anderson fee, the most common pushback I get is, but your club signed Declan Rice for £105 million, like what, 3 summers ago, 2-3 summers ago? I think that's true, but there's a few points that you got to make here, right? Firstly, Rice was far more proven at the stage when Arsenal went and spent £105 million on him than Elliot Anderson, who's coming off the back of one season where we're talking about him as a top midfielder. Let's be honest about that. Okay. Secondly, I think Declan Rice's personality was a massive factor in this. Through that, you could tell, because he was a leader at West Ham, that he was going to come into Arsenal and not just be any player. He was going to have like a leadership role and was probably going to go on and become one of Arsenal's, for wanting of a better term, flagship players. Okay, and finally, I think Arsenal and Arteta knew full well that him coming in would move the needle for Arsenal. Can you say that Elliot Anderson, hand on your heart, makes Manchester City a much better team than the one they are today? Are their chances of winning the league next year enhanced by bringing Elliot Anderson, considering that they might lose Rodri to accommodate that? The answer is no.
Isn't he Bernardo Silva's replacement, essentially, Anderson?
Well, you've lost both. That makes my point even more valid. You've lost both of them. Bernardo Silva and Rodri going out the door. They're on a different planet to Elliot Anderson.
I thought Rodri might do one more year.
Maybe he stays. Maybe he does. But even still, are they a better team? Does this move the needle for Manchester City? No, it doesn't. And also,
but it's difficult to move that needle. I think it was less difficult to move the needle with Arsenal, wasn't it? That's the point. That's
we
the reason
finished, we finished second. They finished second.
No, but my point is that if you're sitting there talking about who's going to move the needle and replace Rodri or Bernardo Silva, that is a very difficult conversation to have. There's not many players at all that are going to do that. So they have looked at Elliot Anderson and thought he has the potential to reach the same level, if not be better than them. I'm not saying he's going to be, but I'm just saying that the needle-moving argument doesn't quite work because it's Manchester City and their squad has been so good down the years.
But it's not what it was, though, is it?
No, but the point I'm making is that you're willing to pay a premium. If you look at your team the season before and you say, man, that was a big issue, this guy is going to fix that issue for me, you're more willing to go that extra mile.
Like if Manchester United done it.
Yeah, exactly. If Man United had done it, I'd agree with it. Manchester City, I don't think this moves any needle for them. I don't even think he's better than Bernardo Silva overall. I'd rather have Bernardo Silva in my squad than Elliot Anderson. I'm sorry, I've never seen a player rise to this level in terms of reputation so quickly, having done so little. I don't understand it. He's had some good performances for Nottingham Forest.
Oh, very good performances. Come on, that's harsh.
But who is watching Nottingham Forest every week with the same scrutiny that he's going to be looked at Manchester City? The other thing is as well, from the player's perspective, why are you so keen to go and join a club that have got 115 financial charges hanging over their heads? Not only that, who knows what Manchester City are going to be post Pep Guardiola? I have no idea why he's made this move. I get that he wants to move on from Forest and it is a step up, but I've got no idea why he's so keen on it seemingly, and why Manchester City were willing to spend this money. This just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, he's got to be keen on it, hasn't he? Manchester City.
Well, no, go and join Liverpool. Go and join Arsenal in a year's time. Go and join a club that doesn't have that hanging over them. Go and join a club that you know where they're going, because
but he could also be earning 300k a week.
Is that the motivation?
It's a pretty good motivation.
Do you think it's a bit Calvin Phillips? Phillips there.
I think that's harsh on Anderson. I think that's
I think Anderson's a brilliant player. I've said to you, I kept an eye on him from that day I saw him play in America. But Grealish went there. One good season out of 4, I think it was. I know it's a different manager. Hey, that's another unknown, the manager. Like you just assume he's going in there. You're going to be playing under Pep, brilliant, but you're not. You're going in under Enzo Maresca, and we don't know what Manchester City are going to be next season. If Rodri's there, I think it's fine. But if what Harry says is true, and Rodri goes, and you're then asking, you've got to be the main man at Manchester City in their midfield. I think that's a completely different conversation.
Well, let's read between the lines, right? Rodri was due to enter contract talks with Manchester City, and from all the reports we're reading, they decided to put those contract talks on hold until after the World Cup. Meanwhile, there's been a ton of speculation about him going back to Spain. In the meantime, Man City go and drop 100 and however many millions.
Surely off.
Exactly. And my point about moving the needle and improving, and I know you've got to refresh, and sometimes you have to bring in younger blood to get back to where you want to be. But my point is, if you are spending that kind of money on a player, you have to guarantee that you're going to be a better team for it. And I don't think, even if it's just Bernardo Silva for Elliot Anderson, I don't think they're a better team for that. So I don't get it.
Guarantees, though, are there? I mean, look how much money Liverpool dropped last summer. They signed Florian Wirtz 117 million. They signed Alexander Isak 130 million.
No, there are some
There's
signings.
No guarantees, are there?
No, there's always a chance that something goes wrong. But Declan Rice to Arsenal was guaranteed to make Arsenal better.
Guarantee.
That was cast iron. Like there are some signings that you look at and you say, I'm so sure that's going to work. That money, it might be a bit over the top, but it's going to work and it's justified. It's like we were talking earlier about Bruno Guimarães. If Arsenal have to pay over the odds for that player, despite his age and all the rest of it, that's fine, because you're as confident as you can be that will fit. This one, I'm not sure.
Yeah, should we talk about Bruno Guimarães then? Because there are rumours that Arsenal are hovering around. There's reports of a verbal offer to the representatives of Bruno Guimarães and nothing concrete towards Newcastle, whose stance is very much not for sale. But Arsenal have wafted the idea of £60 million. Harry, well, look, would you be excited by this? Are you looking at that transfer and thinking that's what the Arsenal need? Because let's be honest, they're going to have to pay more than £60 million for him.
Yeah.
And that's not because Bruno Guimarães is necessarily worth that, given that he's about to turn 29. It's that he is worth a ton more than that to Newcastle United.
Can't win without him.
Yeah, they can't win without him. You're absolutely right. I think Arsenal have earned the right to be able to treat themselves a little bit. And by that, I mean, go and spend a bit more than you ought to spend on a player if you think it's the right fit. You can't have Declan Rice playing 60-plus games again next season. You saw Martin Zubimendi burn out in the second half of last season. Beyond that, you're talking about in those two deeper midfield positions, you're talking about Miles Lewis-Skelly, who's still learning that role and developing. And you're talking Christian Norgard, who might not be even at the club come the end of the summer.
Moreno as well.
Moreno, yeah, but I see him as more of a sort of advanced midfield player than that. He can play in that role, but that's the point. I'm looking at that lot as a 4. And I just think to myself, like, you've earned the right to go and spend a bit more because you've been successful. You've won. You're winning on the pitch. You're winning off the pitch at the moment. Go and do it, because if Bruno Guimarães comes in and Declan Rice has to have a breather from time to time, that makes that a whole lot easier.
What's the max then, though, that you spend on a player that you've just basically admitted there will be a rotation player and come in for Declan Rice?
He'll play a lot of games.
Yeah, he'll play a lot of games. If you're fighting on 4 fronts, which Arsenal are expected to do, he's going to play a lot of games.
A lot of games, but not start every week, is my point.
No, maybe not. I'd go, if I were Arsenal, I'd go up to 75 million here. No more than that, because he's going to be 29 shortly, and you know, I don't think that then makes sense as an investment, and I don't think Arsenal would do that. I don't think it feels like an Arsenal deal once it goes beyond that point. But I would pay it, because I really think that it completes your midfield. Because now you've not just got another body in, you've got another elite body in. And that makes the world of difference.
Yeah, I'm not feeling too good about this one, Dan, as you might be able to tell from my face. I'm very worried about it, mainly because, like we've said, there's no guarantees anymore in football. I've been so scarred by the Alexander Isak saga that I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's nonsense. Bruno Guimarães loves the club. He talks about his kids being Geordies. He has been the poster boy for the relative success that Newcastle have had over the past few seasons. We all know that. And in my heart of hearts, I'd love to think that he wants to continue his career there. But football careers are short, and we've learnt with the Isak saga that, you know, not always do players commit themselves in the way that they maybe say they are. To be fair, Isak kept his cards close to his chest when he used to talk about Newcastle and how much he loved the place, whereas Bruno has been very open about it, etc. But yeah, this would be a disaster for Newcastle.
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt, you say, like, you know, he's been really vocal about loving Newcastle, loving the city and all that. If he gets up and leaves to join the Premier League champions, that doesn't mean that
he loves that Premier League champions. He said it about 7 times on Tuesday.
But it doesn't mean that he didn't love Newcastle. Like, what I would hate to see is Newcastle fans conflating the two things and going, well, he's a liar and he's a mercenary and all of that. No, sometimes opportunities come along in your career. You're at a club right now, which, with all due respect, you'll be the first to admit is not going anywhere right now. So you have to be able to separate.
It's about how you leave, though, was my point. It's about how you leave.
I think he's a different case.
Yeah, exactly.
He wouldn't do what Isak did.
But also, I actually think you're right, Harry, and it pains me to say it, but I do think, you know, I can't speak for all Newcastle fans, but there's a large part of me that wouldn't begrudge it. Because of the absolute mess that our club is at the moment. You know, letting Anthony Gordon go, okay, they got good money for him. He didn't perform that well last season. Sandro Tonali's linked with Tottenham Hotspur.
A monster go by all the sounds of it.
That is just an absolute madness. That would wind me up more than Bruno Guimarães going to Arsenal. I'd rather keep Bruno than Tonali. But you can understand a player, you know, coming up to 29 and wanting to join the Premier League champions. You just can, especially when so many players are jumping ship and this project seems to be falling apart. But I think the PR of Sandro Tonali going to Tottenham Hotspur, who've just finished 17th and don't have European football, that is very damaging for Newcastle United. Very damaging.
Optics are bad on that one. I'm shocked by it, but De Zerbi's an Italian manager. Tottenham only finished 8 points behind Newcastle in the end. Like, it's not a million miles away. They're showing a little bit of ambition off the back of a couple of bad seasons. Newcastle have had a bad season, but you don't trust them to get business done. I think selling Gordon to Barcelona is a good opportunity. Like, they had to start selling well. Teams have to sell well now as well, and I don't begrudge Newcastle doing that. The Isak saga, hands were tied to an extent.
It's had a domino effect, hasn't it?
Yeah,
that's the issue.
It's the turning point.
Is that Isak goes and leaves on bad terms, but then you get other players going, well,
your ambition doesn't.
If he's gone, what is this project? Where is it going? They have a bad season. They finished 12th. Gordon wants out. Tonali wants out. I'm not saying Bruno wants out, but that offer is hovering around. And I think do you know what? It's interesting because your Villa have, I think, approached things very differently. Newcastle's model seems to have been try and cling on to your best players for as long as possible. Don't make big sales, and basically hold your own in the transfer market. Rely on Eddie Howe to somehow try and improve players who aren't of the quality. And that worked up until we won the League Cup and got into Europe. Then Isak goes, and like I say, the dominoes start to fall, and that's what I'm really worried about here. And look, you can lose Tonali. Losing two of your best players, but also two of your midfield, is extremely worrying heading into next season, whoever you sign off the back of it.
Yeah, because Newcastle have shown in the last 12 months that they're not excellent recruiters. They'll go for players. They'll lose out quite publicly, which is also a damaging thing. I think a lot of damaging things have happened to Newcastle in the last 12 months. The whole Isak saga, the fact that you've been in for so many players, and then it's quite obvious that they've chosen not to commit. It's happened again.
Yeah,
as well
is going
as well this summer.
But can I just say though, I think Newcastle have to get better in the way that they operate. Like, for example, you go back to last summer, right? There was all this talk about Ekitike going to. Now, if you're Newcastle United and you've made a fair offer financially, and Liverpool come in, you can't help it if the player goes, I want to go to Liverpool. What you can do is not make a massive song and dance about the Isak thing, saying he's not for sale, he's not for sale, he's not for sale, when you are clearly going to sell him. You can work quietly, work swiftly in the background, and try and wrap up business ahead of time, so that by the time the next thing materialises, you're already ahead of the curve. Now, that doesn't mean that deals can't be hijacked and won't fall apart, but give yourself the best chance. Everybody knew that they were sort of shopping around for a centre forward, and that Isak was going to go for such a long time that it weakened their position, paid over the top for Nick Voltemada as a result of that. I just think the way they're operating, they're not operating like a top level club, and it's tough because we were speaking about it earlier. I look at Villa, who have similar constraints in terms of the finances, but for me, Villa have been willing to roll the dice a little bit and have a really kind of high wage ratio versus their revenue, for example, to try and give themselves the chance to build themselves up as a football club, consistent Champions League qualifications, etc., to try and get on the right path. Newcastle don't seem willing to do that.
They've been smarter, Villa.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm not sure we've necessarily been smarter. I think stuff that maybe gone wrong for Villa hasn't been as public. I think Villa's advantage is the manager, and I like Eddie Howe, and I say that with a lot of respect for Eddie Howe. I think Emery is just a complete difference maker. Like, when things are going bad, he can just do stuff that turns it round and gets you punching well above your weight. Newcastle's problem is that they had a little bit of momentum. They won a trophy. They qualified for the Champions League. And everything that you could have done wrong off the back of that momentum, Newcastle have done. And I said to you when we walked into the studio earlier, I don't think it would take much now for Newcastle to be in Tottenham's position, because you've lost players like Trippier, serious leadership in the dressing room, players that have been there for a while. Once leadership starts to drift, you've seen players acting out and speaking out. Stuff like that starts to happen as well. Key players leaving, manager under a little bit of pressure, recruitment staff maybe not the best. I don't think it would take much for Newcastle to be in trouble.
An example, right? Is it Munoz that's gone to Liverpool that Newcastle were after? 40 million quid, right? Guarantee you, as Dan's just said, if Unai Emery calls you up as a Spanish player, you're probably thinking, Unai Emery, great reputation here, great reputation on the continent, I'm going to have a listen. If Eddie Howe calls you up, sorry, but I'm sorry, that doesn't do it for a lot of players.
I think Iraola shifted it a little bit in that deal, fellow Spaniard.
Yeah, maybe he did. Maybe he did. I just think that there's no... Eddie Howe's got no gravitas. I'm sorry, he just doesn't have it. And what are you going to come there for? To have Jason Tindall standing on the touchline shouting at you all game? Sorry, mate. No. I'm going to go and join a coach that I trust. And I think Newcastle's biggest mistake, and again, Ollie, we've had this conversation before, is that you have to be ruthless in the managerial department, because when you've got Bruno Guimarães, Sandro Tonali all flirting with the idea of potentially leaving, a big managerial change, a statement managerial change, might just lead to people going, hold on a minute, let's give this another chance.
Well, I've really enjoyed this chat, lads. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to the next 25 minutes with you on the show. This is the Social here on talkSPORT 2. Next up, it's Twitter Corner. We'll talk about who the best player in the world is currently after a left field shout from Emmanuel Petit earlier today.